Booyah and good morning. I hope you guys and girls still remember me. It has been a minute, quite a minute for this podcast for a while, but no worries. We are back and with good reason as well because today we are going to be talking about probably the hottest topic in Southeast Asia since the post-pandemic. And what am I talking about? It is pickleball. And in Malaysia, actually not just in Malaysia, like actually in Singapore, in Vietnam, these are like probably the three countries where it's the fastest growing, right? If you want to get into the pickleball scene, there are a few things that you'll need besides your gear, right? The first thing is you will need a community. And usually people find a community, most of them use a platform, and Reclub is one of the most popular ones in recent times. And then after you get that, you also need to book a court. And that's where you also need to find another platform. And arguably, one of the most popular ones is actually called Courtsite. And today, I am super excited that we actually have the co-founder of Courtsite who is on the show. So we're going to be talking about pickleball. We're going to be talking about Courtsite, and we're going to talk about it not so much just from a sporting perspective, but also from a tech perspective. So yeah, welcome to the show, Aaron. Really good to have you on.
No, very excited to be here. Excited to get chatting.
Yes, and thank you so much for agreeing to this total random stranger, hitting you up on LinkedIn DMs, asking you whether
That
you want to come on the show. So,
that seems to be my thing now, reaching out to people, receiving DMs, and we're just meeting people for fun.
okay, okay, nice, nice. So yeah, I mean, before we start, maybe let's have the introduction of Aaron. How would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Nice. Yeah, my name's Aaron. I'm one of the co-founders for Courtsite, which we started about 8 years ago. My experience mostly been in software, which is what I've been helping out since the beginning. But we'll get to this, I guess, maybe later in the conversation that I've recently moved back to Malaysia and now able to do Courtside full time. So across the company now.
Okay, thank you for the elevator pitch of who Aaron Seah is, right? So let's really start at the beginning, and let's talk about Courtside. So maybe first of all, how do you think about Courtside? Like, because I mean, I know you've been on quite a few podcast interviews and things like that, right? So, but let's say from a tech perspective, how what do you think about Courtside? Is it a company? Is it a tech company? Is it a startup? Like, how do you think about Courtside?
Yeah, I think the noun of it doesn't really matter to me personally, and also it's evolved over the years. 8 years ago, when a couple of friends and I started this, it was really basic, right? We just wanted to work together as friends, and the idea that came about was essentially Airbnb for sports. As simple as that. We didn't think too deeply about it, but over the years, evolving, bringing the product to market, seeing how customers reacted, the negative feedback, the positive feedback. I think now it's quite stable in terms of like how I see it at the moment, which is we build tech solutions for the SME market, specifically for sports facilities. Um, that's the way we think we can sort of elevate the sporting industry as a whole, which is having a vibrant sort of SME culture and private facilities that offer very accessible services and at the best quality. That's the sort of way we want to sort of help the industry. And for us, with our tech backgrounds, building that software that enables that is the way we look at it.
Okay, okay, very nice. The Airbnb of sports. I like that. I like that. Okay, so again, since we started here, we will go down this rabbit hole, right? So when you started Courtside, it was 8 years ago. At that point in time, was that it wasn't like your full time? Was it like your full time gig, or was it a side hustle? Maybe talk us a little bit more, because the part which I'm interested about, which I think many people will be interested about also, is I think you were in the UK at that time. And so
Yes.
like yeah, so very curious to know how this building in the UK, how did you, yeah, just all of the details.
Yeah, so definitely a side hustle. I was working at quite a large company at that point, and got really bored of it. The sort of as a software engineer in that sort of company, they kind of want you to sort of stay in your lane. They the fact that you want to go into more product, more design, is like that. It's okay. Like just pick up your tickets, just keep going along. So I was quite bored. And just so happened, good timing. Friends came along, and said like, "Hey, let's try to do something." So yeah, I've been doing that as a side gig at the start, and like initially we didn't even think too much about like how the split of teams or roles was, but it just so happened the people that were sort of full-time engineers were in London, and the people that weren't were in Malaysia. So we had essentially four of us, two across the different countries. And yeah, so me and my co-founder wrote a lot of the code together, and the people on the ground wrote a bit of code, but mostly like selling, trying to figure out operations. How do we like run this thing? How do we settle funds? That sort of stuff.
Mm. So how did that start? Like did y'all like come sit down and then just like, okay, hey, I'm bored, and then like, oh, okay, let's build a company, like what, or was it like, did you go to somebody and say, hey, I have this idea, I have a dream, and then like yeah, how did that conversation happen?
Um, I think we knew because these friends were essentially uni mates. We had long nights sort of talking through like, oh, one day I would love to build a startup. Like there was the era of the social network movie, and I'm sure that inspired a whole generation of entrepreneurs. So yeah, that we knew we were like sort of on the same page in terms of motivations and stuff like that. And then we kind of went our separate ways, and then one of the co-founders, Joey, a very close friend, reached out to me and said like, "Hey, I've been thinking about starting a company, and badminton is like huge in Malaysia. Can we do something here?" Paired out with my own personal experiences in the past of like playing a lot of tennis in Malaysia, um, and knowing that process of booking a court was so painful, it just felt very obvious thing to do. So it kind of cut across a few different things, both from being super bored at work, want to try different technologies, understanding the pain point, a very close and good friend reaching out. So that all created that perfect scenario to like, oh, let's just try it. Nothing really to lose at that point.
Right, right. Okay, okay. And then the like, then how did that progress from at that point in time when you guys were, I'm assuming Joey's the guy, by the way, or is it a,
Hmm.
okay, so you and
Yes.
Joey, like you guys were like planning this out. Okay, there's a problem here to be solved. We have a potential solution. Um so when you all started doing this as a side hustle, how would you all divide up the work? Like, was it just really like, oh, okay, today I'm free, I will do this? Like, did you all use some sort of board, or literally using spreadsheets? Like, how organized was it? I'm just very curious because I mean, from a perspective of someone who, because I've used Courtsite before, right? So you got all these features, then you're always wondering like, how did it start, right? So.
Hmm. Yeah, I think we were quite lucky in the sense of, um, how do I say it? Sort of the way we worked was very like natural and like on the same page. So there wasn't a really big need to like coordinate when it comes to the actual building of the product. We did spend a lot of energy figuring out like sort of our DNA and like values, right? Understanding the sort of softer side of things of like what was important to us. But in terms of the product itself, like it felt very natural. We were working pretty much every evening. Um, and yeah, back then it didn't really feel like work as well. It was definitely like a hobby. Just like in the past, I used to log on to play games with friends all the time. That was exactly the same. We jump on, I don't know if Discord was it back then, but like we jump on some sort of call, go through like, oh, last night after you slept, this is what I done. And then as I look at it, it's like, oh yeah, I can help on this part. Then I'll just jump on. Like it all felt very natural, especially the 0 to 1
Mm.
from the start of the idea to shipping that first version was quite natural, surprisingly.
Okay, okay. And how long did it take for you and your co-founders and the friends that you were working with? Like, how long was it from the time you started talking about it to the time where you actually shipped something? Like, and then how did that happen? So that's the other interesting piece that I think usually people don't get to hear, right? Because everyone says, "Oh, I want to do something." But then the thing is, like, when it is done, like, how did you push it out, and what did you do to sort of get it off the ground? Because obviously, even if it's already live and but nobody's using it, kind of still, it's not valuable yet, right?
Yes, yes, for sure, for sure. I think if I recall correctly, the first conversations we had were in like September 2017, and we properly like announced to the world that we have something probably around April or May 2018. So all in all, that is like, I don't know, 7 months, six,
Mm,
7 months.
yeah.
But obviously we had quite a few prototypes along the way, a few early conversations with potential customers. Um, and the final launch was just kind of like making a bigger splash, not a big splash. We were quite small back then. So yeah, it was interesting times. And yeah, looking back, actually surprisingly natural. Didn't really need to do any like sort of coordination or management like I will have
Mm.
to do today.
Okay, okay. And so then when you announced it to the world, like, how did you get your first paying customer? Actually, not actually, I should even take one step back. So when you announced it, what kind of was it, like a free model? Was it like, yeah, how was it working? Because obviously, I believe your business model actually works off the companies or the businesses who decide to use you, right? So how did you get your first paying customer?
Yeah, it's a interesting story because like when we first started it, the vision was like Airbnb for sports, right? And we were building it. And it's like, oh, this be so cool, so much easier to use as a customer. And then we brought it to potential customers. So customers, we kind of have two. One is like the B2C side and the B2B side. B2C
Mm,
being like the people play the sports, B2B being the sports facilities. And I think initially, obviously, as a general consumer, you look at it from the consumer side. Airbnb was the experience of booking on Airbnb. But what we didn't really put too much attention to and very quickly had to pivot is if you don't have the sports facility, it's over. There's nothing to book, right?
mm,
Um,
mm,
so those initial conversations, we did have some very forward-looking customers back then to jump ship on us, but we found us hitting quite early roadblock where it's not uncommon where we go to sell to a facility, and even though they're doing pen and paper, they will go like, my courts are full. Like I don't need more customers. So immediately sort of pivoting to like understanding business pain points. Obviously, we don't run sports facilities. Having to sort of immerse yourself in that, really understand it deeply, was probably one of the hurdles that we had to jump across. Then things started to become smoother.
mm. And then, so I guess the question again that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. You're doing all this while you're in the UK, but I believe the businesses that you're talking to are like in Malaysia. So were the friends in Malaysia the ones having to talk to them, or like were you like doing like long distance video calls and stuff like that?
Uh, I don't recall doing any long distance calls. That was still very early. Like Zoom wasn't really a
Yeah,
thing. Like,
correct, correct.
and also the sort of businesses we're selling to were not digital savvy, anyways.
Yes.
So definitely a lot of in-person meetings that I lost out a lot of time on. But every
Mm.
time I did come back, I tried to visit some. So yeah, definitely more remote from my point of view, but the people on the ground, my two co-founders, are very aggressive at trying to just get as much information as possible in terms of understanding businesses and yeah, selling to them.
Got it, got it. And at what point in time, like how did you all decide and realize that okay, what we have built up until the point when you launched, like we are ready to go out to market? Because one of the key, I mean, the key problems with software development is usually, do you underbuild and then oversell? Do you overbuild and then sell? Like how did you get to that realization? Okay lah, we are ready to go.
Yeah, I think for us, maybe it's again like a very natural sort of alignment between the co-founders, which is like we want to get it out as soon as possible. We the way we saw it, or at least me personally, the longer we build, the more the deeper the hole you're digging, and the harder it is to back out from. So spotting sort of the core pain points. Obviously, back then the initial stages wasn't this tactical, but we were very desperate to try and get it to like let's give it to somebody to use. So a lot of like initial features were like we don't even design like some way database driven sort of populating the pages. We're like hard coding things, like a lot of things to just get sort of real world usage. So yeah, we were definitely in the mindset of like we need to get it out as soon as possible, and not kind of play the game of like, oh wow, such an amazing thing we're building, and just get into this echo chamber. Like we need
Mm,
someone to come and like throw rocks at our windows,
yeah.
sort of approach. So yeah, at that point it was just mostly like the opposite case, not saying like whether we are ready for it. It's like we have to prove that we're not ready in some ways, like almost the
Mm,
opposite. And at that point, the main sort of consumer side flows were very obvious. So for that initial launch, that's the sort of thing we were focusing on, and sort of back end tooling for the businesses were sort of bare bones. And then we realized we actually had to do the opposite. But that was post the initial launch.
mm, mm. Okay, okay. So now we fast forward all the way, right? And then now you're at this point where you have decided that you are going to do Courtsite full time. Because as you were saying early on, it was the side hustle, right? So now the question becomes, how did you come to the realization, or what happened that made you realize that okay, right now I really have to do Courtsite full time. Like now this becomes my full time hustle, right?
Yeah. So this was this year, February. I moved back to Malaysia for personal reasons, and was quite 50-50 on whether I come back to Courtside. The company has been growing, financially it's been great. Pickleball is booming. Things all seem really good. And I felt like me rejoining wasn't necessarily a value add. So that was the sort of reasons not to do. And decided just to meet the team, right? The then CEO, my now product manager, just meeting people across the company. And I realized a lot of the problems that the team was facing were things that I had a lot of experience in, at least the sort of being part of companies that sort of solve problems like these. Um, Whether that's like how quickly tech can ship product, the sort of disconnect between product, tech, design, all those things. And I spotted that and I go like, oh, this is actually something I can help. Um, so it became a I can see how I can add value, and I don't want to just re-enter because like, oh, co-founder comes back. Like I definitely didn't want that. I definitely wanted to feel like I was bringing something to the table. And yeah, long story short, the problems the team was facing were things that was very comfortable helping fix. And yeah, 9, 10 months later, no regrets. It's been great. It's been great.
Nice, nice. So yeah, okay. I think now we'll probably go into a little bit of the trickier questions that I've got in my head right now, right? Because um, I don't think it was clear for me. So you there was a time where you sort of like left Courtside and then you went to the working world, or was it always this? Okay, I'm gonna like put Courtside as my 10% on my my free time, and then I walk away. Like what was that? What was that? Yeah, what was that arrangement like?
Yeah, so it went from progressively like from one end of like doing a full-time job and also doing courtside pretty much all of my free time to progressively lesser and lesser time I would spend on courtside. Over so 2019, 2020, 2021 pandemic was very interesting as well. We started to hire our team, hire engineers, and uh, a lot of the pains that the team was going through in 2020, onwards were mostly from the business development side, customer success side. And that was not something that I could really feel like I was contributing meaningfully from the UK. So I decided to progressively pull back, check in once in a while, and at some point become almost completely passive, mostly checking in on like a couple months, seeing how things are going. Um, so yeah, it was uh, like that up until I moved back this year, and then it was like full steam ahead again. So yeah,
Hmm.
uh, yeah, that was kind of like the progression for me.
Okay, and at that point, I think you were saying the team was already hiring engineers as well, right? So I'm trying to like piece
Yep.
this timeline all together. So okay, they were already hiring
Yes.
engineers at that time. Okay, okay. And so then you decided to come back. So you're coming back and taking courtside slightly unrelated, lah. You came back for personal reasons. Then you decided, okay,
Hmm.
maybe it's the right time to come back to courtside. Um,
Yeah.
so
Exactly.
then so then I guess next question also is, I believe, and please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. I believe the boom from Courtside's perspective was actually very related to pickleball. Um, First of all,
Mhm.
is that correct? And then secondly, like what do you attribute it to?
Yeah, definitely. One of the one of the big reasons of our growth in the past 2 3 years definitely was from pickleball. Um, we went from I think it was 60 70 facilities in 2022 2023, and now we are like 300 and almost 360. So a huge boom across the years, and a lot of it came from pickleball. I also think a lot of it came from just like the post-COVID, post-pandemic
Mm,
effect, where things like digital payments are just very common now. You don't even think twice now. Um, Even now, when people talk about booking pickleball, it's like if it's not online, like that's kind of weird. Whereas before the pandemic, that wasn't the case.
yeah.
So it kind of was in lockstep, and in some ways, also it would be interesting to create a theoretical simulation of like what if there weren't platforms like Courtside or our competitors, and we try to like grow pickleball in Malaysia. Like, how would that have gone? Um,
Mm,
but yeah, to your question, yes, pickleball definitely has been a huge thing for us, and a lot of it we attribute it to sort of a technical rewrite we did over pandemic, where everything was shut down. When was the best time to do a giant architecture refactor? It was then, where back then it was very specific to badminton and futsal, and my co-founder, CTO, decided to, hey, let's refactor this to make it more generic, where it could essentially support any sport. And lucky we did that, because when pickleball came, it wasn't even a matter of like, oh, now we need to pivot. We were just
mm.
ready, and we could just onboard as many as we like.
And what do you think, at least from a court side perspective, was the biggest driver of the boom for court side? Was it the fact that I mean, we've mentioned that the external factor was a new sport that was booming called pickleball, right? But from a platform perspective, what do you think really allowed this to really explode? Was it the fact that it was easy for the payment side? Was it the fact that it was easy to onboard the clients? You know, what was it that you attribute the ability for Courtsite to really jump in at that point in time and really ride that wave?
Yeah, 100%. 100% the sort of refactor that we did over the pandemic. It was flexible enough that it could accommodate essentially any sport, which pickleball was brand new. We could pivot very quickly from a sort of customer acquisition point of view. The platform
Mm,
itself basically had zero changes. Um, Things like all the things that we were building beforehand, a lot of the pain points that customers told us, like, oh, I want pricing to be like this, and I want all these sort of crazy configurations, like we were building slowly along the way. So whatever customers threw at us, like, oh, I created this new pickleball facility. I want this special pricing or whatever. And it's like, yeah, we can do it. So yeah, as a platform, we were really ready. Um, Although like these sort of things is not something you could really predict. You can, I think, from a product point of view, this sort of gut feeling that sometimes you need to trust.
mm,
So yeah, I think the from a court side perspective, in terms of the boom was there, how did we take advantage of it? Definitely the platform helped a lot, where
mm,
it wasn't like, oh, we needed to wait for tech to build something. Our business development team, our customer success team can all just like go and sell and then onboard customers basically at will. The bottleneck
mm.
was mostly the BD and CS side, which is, I think, the opposite case for most of the startups are here in Malaysia.
Yes,
So we
yeah.
were lucky, very lucky to be in that position, and yeah, there for when the market arrived.
I was actually gonna jump in on that part as well, right? Because what you highlighted is a very antithetical problem to most other companies. Most problem companies is the BD side, you know, goes out, sell something that doesn't exist yet, and then come back, hey guys, we need to build this, right? They were like, what the heck, right? So yours was actually the other way around, where and I'm hearing that you're saying you really attributed it to that whole refactor, that major architecture revamp that was done during the pandemic. And it just allowed that customization to happen. So it was really the case of now, okay, now we've got a super truly flexible platform, and now we just need to get the customers in, right? um
Yeah,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to touch one more thing, which is like, because we were in the industry before pickleball happened. Um, Things like badminton facilities were very very mature, and a lot of their arts were so advanced that when pickleball came in, felt very easy, right? You have
Mm,
crazy things like a facility that might have a full basketball court that can be split into two half courts and then into four badminton courts. Like things like that were just completely like, we already handle this, right? Where you
okay.
book one badminton court, it blocks out the half court and the full court. So yeah, I think in some ways, a lot of the pickleball boom came from also new business owners, right? People that just love the sport and wanted to have their own facility, play pickleball for free for life. And Because we were in the industry for so long, a lot of them approached us as sort of we call our customers partner centers, and really
Mm,
treated us like partners, right? Where they will come to us for advice of like, what do you think the pricing should be? And we have the data and we can tell like, okay, for your region, like this is probably the best you can do. So it was a very symbiotic relationship, right? It's not
mm,
us trying to extract value out of customers. It's us providing value that they feel very happy to be part of and like willing to transact, right? So I think that was also the interesting thing about pickleball, where there was a lot of new owners, not much
mm,
experience, leaning on a platform to like help guide them through that journey.
yeah. The very interesting point that you highlighted, right? And I really liked that example that you gave, right, where there were centers, or you know, sport centers who had co- uh, dynamic configurations almost, or flexible configurations, and you had to tackle for that. And so when pickleball came in, it was almost like pickleball was the easier problem to solve, and just the
Mhm.
onboarding them and helping them with more of, okay, technically from a feature perspective, this is actually, I mean, I hope I'm not trivializing this child's play,
No.
and now the bigger problem is, okay, what do you think your pricing should be? How do you make it work, booking wise, and canceling? I'm guessing all of that nitty gritty stuff that was coming into play, right? Um,
Yeah.
my follow-up question that was going to be like, again, now in the present, um actually, maybe I should give you an opportunity to, like, throw out some crazy stats on like how many centers and how many bookings, and whatever, then I'll go into my question. But yes, this is the bragging wall, a moment for Courtsite.
Um, yeah, to be honest, like there's quite a lot of numbers that I'm very proud of, but I still think the most meaningful one to me is still the number of facilities that we have, number of partner centers on the platform. Um, because running a business, like as me as also like a business owner for Courtside, trusting your company, your whether that's your revenue, customer relationship with any other third party is a very big like commitment, right?
Yeah.
A lot of trust involved, and of course money also, right? We help
Yes.
transact their money, and I think that's still the most meaningful step for me, where how many businesses have trusted us with their sort of livelihood and the brand sort of image and the sort of customer relationship trust, like all that probably is still the most important thing for me. There's number of users, there's like sort of total volume of money transacted, like all these things are very big numbers, and like 10 years ago or 8 years ago I wouldn't have expected this.
Mm.
But it's still the smaller number of 300 and almost 360. I think we're 358 at this point, 358 facilities that trusted us with their business.
Wow, 358. Let me give you an air horn.
Let's
Wow,
go.
that is awesome. 350. And are these over X number of countries? Yeah, how many countries are they across? Are they all in Malaysia?
Right now we're completely in Malaysia, but yeah, across whole Malaysia,
Mm.
or from Penang all the way to like Sabah Sarawak.
Okay, okay, fantastic, fantastic. So this is literally the well, I mean, to say it, a very very selfish way, the Malaysian success story, right? Built in Malaysia, is built for Malaysia, and then it's expanded and such. So I guess then the following questions that I wanted to jump into is, so right now, you're really one of the directors at Courtside. You're really at that management level. How do you see, or how do you determine where should Courtside go from here? Because technically, in terms of having a very stable, flexible platform, you've got it. In terms of proving the market fit, you have it. How do you decide, or maybe it's the team decides, how does that work at Courtside?
Yeah. So I think for us, the main mission is still like how do you make it as easy as possible to operate a sports facility. There's still quite a lot of things that we would love to touch on. We we've already hit sort of this milestone a few years ago of like a completely manless facility, and we want to keep taking it further. Um, the manless facility, you can have it for a certain set of features, but I know there are certain facilities that want to have even more customization or even more sort of selling memberships, selling packages. This is something we don't do at the moment. And that sort of customer relationship that you rely on, like, oh, how much credits do I still have, or like, can I use these credits for other services, like, and having that sort of flexibility is something we haven't nailed down yet. But that's sort of the things that we want to keep pushing the boundary of like how easy can it be. Um, so that mission is still there, and we're still building towards it. But yeah, I think at this stage, we feel like um, the sports facility sort of industry, there's only so many more facilities we can go to. We're thinking beyond the traditional ones as well. So like schools, is a very good one. Universities as well. So at some point that has like sort of theoretical limit, right? And we're definitely trying to see beyond that with new verticals. Nothing too much to touch on yet, but we did kickstart a team of three, including myself. This week we like went off on a product offsite to have a think about what this vertical will look like. But yeah, we definitely wanting to see beyond like what else could we do other than serve sports facilities. Are there any other sort of audiences that we can bring sort of the solutions that we are quite good at already to see how else we can help.
Mm. So take me inside the brains of Courtsite, right? How does it happen? Like does it usually be sorry, let me get my thoughts together first. Like, okay, I'll give an example of how Google does it. So one of the very famous rituals that Google had was in the early days, right, where the two co-founders had this session. I think it was every Friday, where anyone could come in, pitch an idea to them, and then they'll go, okay, this is good, I shall fund your idea, go ahead building, and this is how it is. So for Kotza, how does that happen? Is it like, so the BD person, or someone in sales coming in and says, oh, okay, we have this new request, or is it like you speaking to someone, or is it the CTO, or is it the product manager coming and saying, oh, I've seen our competitor do this, competitive landscape looks like this. Like, how does that process work? Is there a defined process, or is it something that just happens, again, very naturally, organically?
Yeah, I think how an idea sort of arrives on a team's desk is quite natural. That part is very natural. I think we are the way we've sort of tuned ourselves on like what are things that are worth building or what are ideas that are worth sort of talking about are things that highlight a very specific pain point. So we try to not talk about solutions when it comes to brand new ideas. We always try to talk about pain points. Um, Although customers do come to us with a lot of solutions, I think some of their solutions may not be uh, good for a whole platform, let alone for themselves. Sometimes they
Mm,
say like, "Oh, this other tool does it this way. Maybe you can like replace it and do it in your tool, right?" Um, but what they're really really good at is like complaining about stuff, right? Pain points is a huge thing,
yeah, yeah,
and I think this is a YC quote or maybe some founder quote of like sell painkillers, not vitamins, right? Um, you you hear from colleagues like anyone have Panadol, no one's gonna ask like anyone got like vitamin C, like
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
so we definitely try to talk about pain points, understanding like why is it painful, um, and that's also what sort of our BD team also uses as like, okay, here's how we should help this customer. And same for our product and tech teams. So how the idea arrives can come from anyone or the pain point can arrive from anyone. And then from there, how we sort of take it to like completion, like we do have some sort of a rough ritual that we do. Um, but the sort of key highlight from that is like engineers are essentially the main driving force.
Mm,
PMs and um, designers are facilitators, not stakeholders. Um, and yeah, we try to like ship something in the region of 2 weeks, and just keep iterating on it. So that's sort of our product process. In terms of prioritization, we have loads of ideas. I think there are certain, I don't think we have like a very clear formula of how we do this. A lot of it's gut feel. There'll be
mm,
a certain bucket of things which is like regulatory. We have to do it like e-invoicing, like we have to
yeah.
help our customers do this. But there's also some things that are nicer to have, like the one I'm very proud of this year, even though it's very small, is supporting ball machines as a first class thing,
Mm,
where you can book a court with a ball machine.
mm,
And you can see our competitors, how they handle it. They basically treat a ball machine like court. And when you try to book multiple courts, the chances they go out of sync on
yeah,
different
solidly.
times, and then they have to refund customers. So yeah, this is like a
Mm,
very perfect example of like
mm,
pain point. It's hard to coordinate. We built it. shipped it, and yeah, our customers are happy.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much for that. I really love the sharing about the ball machine because that's definitely the new problem to solve today, right? All these court owners are now coming. Oh, now I've got a ball machine. Now, how do I tackle this? Because, like you said, right, if you treat the ball machine like a court, then the problem is then what happens if more than one? Yeah, I can imagine all the permutations that need to go around with it. Okay, okay. So maybe since we've been sort of talking a little about this, let's go a little bit down into maybe like culture and style and things like that, right? Because you obviously came from the tech industry, working, in the tech scene. Um, what is like? How do you think about Courtsite in terms of its culture of what you liked about the tech scene that you've been trying to integrate as part of the practices or best practices within Courtside, and what are some of the things that you are um, uh, purposely trying to either avoid or trying not to do because you felt that it was difficult? Like I think early on you were saying that you were bored in your job, in your day job at that time because everyone kept telling you stay in your lane, right? What were the learnings that you took that you either took into Courtside, and what were some of the things that you have intentionally thrown out or decided not to take?
Yeah, that's a lot here. That's a lot here. I think one thing that I really appreciated from a previous a company I worked for, transparency. I think transparency, defaulting to transparency is such a powerful thing. Um, and I think the contrast to Malaysian work culture is probably the most jarring thing for me. Lots of
Mm.
things happen in DMs, private channels, like uh,
Side
on a
side
need to
PMs.
know. Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times, like information is sort of like, I need you to justify like why this needs to be public. And
Mm.
I like turning it on its head, right? I think one thing, at least from as an engineer, one thing I used to really hate is like being like isolated, kept in the box, right? Like you only get the work that comes to you is like a PM makes it perfect for you, no questions asked, do exactly ABCD,
Mm.
like an AI agent basically. And yeah, you go off and do it, right? And I think I want to create a environment where every individual in the company, and when we talk about engineers, be able to understand the full context of the problem, right? Not just like technical, like okay, I need to scale this to this many users, whatever, but more of like when a customer asks for this, this is the exact reason why they ask for it. Because as you, whatever work you do, and I'm sure in it's the same for other roles as well, but as an engineer, there are going to be a lot of micro decisions you make along the way, right?
Mm.
Do I
Mm.
build, is this a sort of problem where it's very specific to this customer? Is it specific to this sport? Is it specific to this region? Like you're going to make a lot of micro decisions on how you structure your code, how
Mm.
extensible it is. And if you know that context, like you're gonna make better decisions upfront without any additional cost. And I believe this is true across the board, whether that's finance, BD, CS, marketing. As much context as you have, the better solution you can come up
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
So yeah, transparency is a huge thing. The other one also is like feeling empowered, right? Or giving autonomy to people. Like I think this is where high performers thrive, and not just like defining defining your role so specifically to a specific set of bullet points, but be able to go like I'm in the boundary of like a design slash engineer, but also interested in finance. Like I think I would like to see, I like people at work to sort of bring their own DNA, right? And if that's interest in music and engineering, like I wish that somehow that would form in the company. But yeah, we've had people in the company as well go from BDCS to product manager even like I like seeing people bring their own themselves to work, right, whatever that mix of flavor is. So yeah, and as part of that, empowering people to go step out of your lane, like there is no lane, like you can the transparency also helps this, right? If people from the product team can jump into the BD channels, like they'll understand, like, oh, okay, this customer is asking for this, and this is potentially a deal size. Like, okay, like I feel a sense of achievement when I can like bring that sort of impact to the company. So yeah, I think transparency and like autonomy like kind of come hand in hand and kind of
Mm.
reinforce each other, and that's sort of one of the few things that uh, I'm I'm trying to bring back here to Courtside.
I think you make a really good point about the that I don't know whether it's a Malaysian culture or this typical Asian culture of everything is always secret until stated otherwise. Please don't tell, don't do. Um, but really, I think really kudos to you and Courtside for really wanting to do this. But especially with the transparency part, it also brings along with it other problems as well. Right? Because one of the things is that you're saying, look, if everybody wants to jump, the couple of issues here that I constantly hear about. I've even experienced myself. One is when people feel like their turf is endangered in that sense, right? Like why are you trying to suggest solutions for me, or why are you trying to do my job for me? So that's one thing that is, culturally we want to, I know you want to change, but not necessarily easy to do, because that becomes a pain point. Like for example, one person who's very very competent in this particular area, and then suddenly now this person is saying, hey, actually I have this idea. It's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you, back to that, it's stay in your lane kind of thing. I think that's one. I think the other one is also how does that, as part of that transparency endeavor, to make sure that it then doesn't become this chaos instead, right? Where everybody suddenly decides. So, for example, like when I say chaos, specifically meaning like now suddenly there are things that other people need to do that previously they don't need to do. So, like the very popular one is always, they say that, oh, there are engineers who just want to code, leave them alone. Don't make them go and talk to customers. Don't make them do these kind of things. But like you were saying, right? But part of that enrichment of understanding the problem and coming up with an amazing solution is actually being part of these kinds of processes that not necessarily everybody wants to do.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. I think first and foremost, like, I think one thing that I definitely recognize is that culture for me, whatever flavor of it, is not a universal like um, um, objectively good thing, right? For everyone, there's a world where transparency is just something that some people are not comfortable with, or autonomy, right? Some people want to be told what is the right answer. I can execute. I'm the best executor. I can do the most complex things, but you need to give me the blueprint, right? Um, so I think it's kind of a personal taste, personal preference, and hopefully with us, the culture we build, we can sort of attract those people that are drawn to that sort of culture. But yeah, I think want to lay out that sort of like there's no objectively correct or right culture. Um, but I do see definitely have encountered sort of that pushback, right? Things like I'm expert in this, don't question me. I think the way I try to advise people on situations like this is that the giving of feedback is very important, like how you give feedback. How you receive feedback is also very important. It takes two to clap, essentially. So if let's say if you're the person giving feedback or giving suggestions, and you're not an expert of that field, it's always good to start off with just like understanding, like, oh, actually, why did you choose this solution? Help me understand. Um, and also it's a bit of a mix of like how you give feedback. But yeah, I think coming in essentially as a open ears, trying to understand things is always going to help open doors. And also receiving feedback, understanding that, and also this needs like a whole culture to enforce this. Like as a colleague, I'm here to help, right? Even if I don't know your field, I I feel like I can help. Maybe walk this road with me and see like how it ends up, right? And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. Like we don't have to implement things that everyone suggests. So yeah, how you give and receive feedback is probably one of the key things in sort of maintaining that transparency while not like burning bridges.
Mm, mm. Very very sound advice. Very good, very good. Loving it, loving it. So I guess then, just broadening this discussion of, culture direction. Um, Courtside, has it always been bootstrapped, and what are the plans for Courtside? Is it going to always be, are you thinking more like you want to be the base camp of sports, Airbnbs, or are you thinking about, I want to be the next Salesforce? What's that? What does that thought process look like at the moment?
Um, I have a personal answer and I have the investor answer, right? My
Okay,
personal
okay.
answer is actually really simple, which is just wanting to work, like basically wake up in the morning every day, look forward to going into the office and working with a great set of people. To me, that's my non-negotiable, and I know in that circumstance, whatever we do, Courtside could close down, we will start a brand new thing. Whatever we do, we will succeed, right? Um, and we can be obsessive about it in terms of performance, quality, and all that stuff. And if you have a good team around you, and you're part of a good team, I think executing that becomes fun, right? Not just like sort of manual work and like laborious work. That's what I meant to say. But enjoy the day to day. That's all my own personal ambition, right? As a company, I think this is something that is not too crazy, right? I think every time people talk about growth, the two dimensions they talk about is like multi-region, multi-category. And I think this is options for us to go and explore. I think I'm leaning more towards multi-category at this point. Multi-region is one of those things where I think might be uh, at least at this stage of the company, unless we something significantly changes in terms of size or expertise or maybe even investors, is a lot of our USP comes from being very deep in the Malaysian network, right? Things like e-invoicing, like where outside of sports facilities, all SMEs are panicking for January or July next year, depending on your revenue, when the rules kick in for you. And you see billboards across the road, like e-invoice now, like all these things and courses on how to do e-invoice. This is something that for partner centers on our system, like it's not, they don't even think about it. They don't even realize it's a thing. So yeah, I think being Malaysia, made in Malaysia, made for Malaysians, that is like one of our strongest points. And I think multi-region to be able to replicate, to go like, oh, if let's say Vietnam, right? Can we get that level of specialization? And I think that's what I would love to achieve, but that's probably further ahead than multi-category. So multi-category is probably the way we're gonna expand forwards in the years to come. So yeah, what else is beyond sports booking is kind of like how we're thinking about it at this point. In terms of investors or not, we are in a lucky position where we bootstrapped it. We have full control of our destiny, and now grown to the point where like sort of burn rate is not even something we think about. Um, so I think if we do bring on investors, it will be very tactical, right? What else can they bring on board? Cash is something that now we can go borrow from the bank and not be rejected, and we can make those payments. So it have to be other things like what is the network they bring, what's the expertise they can bring to us, maybe the regional expansion stuff they can help us with. But yeah, you'll have to be very strategic to help us grow beyond like what we can do ourselves, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's a really good take about it. And I mean, it's amazing to hear that, you're an organization that doesn't have to worry about your run rate. I think for a startup, that's probably like music to the owner's ears, right? Because that means that, like you said, you're really in control of your destiny. You're not having to do something just because it brings in the quick money now. You're able to make, really much better decisions. Yeah, so really congrats on that. I think that to me is truly a really amazing measure of success for Courtside. Um,
No,
and my
we're very happy. We're very happy with that. But I also want to for anyone listening that's like, oh, that's the only way to go. Again, kind of similar to culture, like there's no one
Yeah,
way to do it, right?
agreed.
Obviously, bootstrapping is kind of like doing it on hard mode, right? There was a lot of painful years um, from the team. But yeah, and I think, and also even when you're in control of your destiny, in some ways the cons would be like it's completely on you, right? Like
Yeah.
you make the mistakes. You can't say like, oh, now this investor is holding back on this milestone, even technically we did reach it. Like you can, there's excuses you can lean on, but now it's like
Mm,
your, it's all you, right?
mm,
If
mm.
we fail from here, it's completely on me, or if we succeed from here, it's the whole team, right? Like so we need to take the whole burden of that and not really have someone to share. So pros and cons. There's no right answer to this.
Yeah, agree. I think from my perspective, where I'm seeing this as a not just a positive, but for a very strong point for a startup like Courtsite is, we've seen how over the years, especially I think after that post pandemic boom, right? There's been sort of what people like to call this funding winter, and I think just being able to be in a state to say that I don't have to force myself to make any of these decisions. I think it's where that is the to me like at least it's a luxury that not everyone has. But you're right, I don't think there is only one way to do it. There are many ways to skin a cat. So yeah. Okay. I guess final question around just culture and no, well, not just culture, but I guess talking about Courtside as an organization, how is AI affecting the way that you do things? Because usually when you talk about people always like to talk about AI and agents and all these, and it's always usually in a very hopefully not disrespecting anyone in a very geeky nerd out way. But from a perspective of being a startup within the sports scene, how is AI changing the way that you guys are building things or doing things?
Yeah. So to be very transparent and very open, and this is probably not a very good sign on us, is that I don't think we are very AI native. This is something that I think we definitely should put more efforts into. Um, but the interesting thing so far is that we haven't had any sort of pull on it. So I think there's sort of two ways that people approach AI now. One is like AI or die kind of world, or the other side, which is kind of just like any other tool, whether it's database technologies or whatever SaaS tool that you need to use as part of the workflow, or a ticket management system, is kind of like problem first, then use the right like tool for that problem. And we've always been very comfortable in the world of like, oh, when we hit a problem, we find the right tool for it. And right now, we haven't really hit problems where AI has become a very core part of it. So that's why I will feel that we are kind of on the back foot. I think we need to try swing left a bit and try to see is there ways we can bring it in. We do use AI for a lot of sort of internal processes, whether that's like in our sort of customer success support side of things, trying to manage the workload there. But one of the newer things that we are doing with engineering and product is prototyping now is so much quicker. Um, and being able to flesh out ideas and find poke holes and see what are the potential issues. I think prototyping has been a very key part of like how AI has changed and accelerated our progress. So when it comes to either new features or for us now with a new vertical, like that's been insanely helpful. We Yesterday we just came back from a week long offsite doing that sort of stuff. And yeah, I was really surprised by how much progress we could make in just 5 days. So, long story short, I think we are probably not utilizing AI enough, but excited by the prospects that we're seeing early on.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, even from the way that you've put about it, using it for prototyping, I don't think that it's a bad state. You're right. I mean, of course, everything can always be improved, but I was thinking, wow, it sounds so bad. But actually, no, I think you guys are doing okay. So I mean, not like my opinions matter very much, but yeah,
But I
okay,
think the sort of like touching on the previous points about like how we are in this like comfortable state, like I actually think like now is quite dangerous in terms of complacency.
yeah,
AI essentially lowers the bar for like an entrant to enter the market. I think we still have a moat, but that moat closes if we don't keep it, right? And if our competitors are AI native from how we build perspective, they will be faster than us. So this is something that is a huge risk for us and something that we are putting energy into, as a like we continuously keep like a distance from our competitors and any new entrants into the market.
Mm, yep. Wise words indeed. Wise words indeed. Yeah. So let's move on, and let's talk a little bit about the sport that has essentially made Courtsite a household name, right? Which is really pickleball. Because I think from a Malaysian perspective, it's quite interesting how fast this sport has literally exploded and gotten on. But at the same time, if you read on social media, there is a lot of hate that's also happening, right? And you mentioned at the start of this podcast, you were saying that actually you're actually a tennis player as well, which is also very very interesting, right? Because a lot of that hate comes from sports people, comes from tennis players, right? So how much does it
Mhm.
kill you, or how much does it make you, sad or whatever, that pickleball is growing so fast and much faster to a point that there are actually many tennis courts which are now actually being converted into pickleball centers as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think overall, like obviously I'm biased, but I'm happy with the state of like pickleball being such a big thing. Uh, it being quite polarizing is also an interesting situation. But I think my personal take on like the good opinions, the bad opinions about or negative opinions about pickleball, I think it's mostly a function of it being a very mainstream thing rather than necessarily something that is inherently wrong with pickleball. You can say this about any sort of mainstream thing that came out very quickly in the past, whether that's like bubble tea or like coffee shops. Like, oh, it's ridiculous how many coffee shops there are now. Or when Starbucks was expanding, it's like, oh, you got Starbucks like one here and then 20 meters away, another Starbucks. People will find something to say about their observations. So I think, personally, I think there isn't any sort of real tangible negative to pickleball. I think everyone would say it's a net positive, right? It's
Mm,
healthier
mm,
than a lot of the activities we used to do in the past. Like now it's become so commonplace and so accessible that even I personally feel like it's replaced the like late night mamak session with friends. Like now people go play pickleball, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think it's been a net positive both for Malaysian citizens, um, and also from a business perspective, like you have more businesses coming into now. You've got a whole ecosystem where there's merchandising, even media companies that are specializing on pickleball. I think all of this activity is a net positive, and yeah, I personally don't get bothered by a lot of the negative sort of stuff. Um, I think it's mostly a function of it being more mainstream.
Mm, okay, okay. But one of the, I think, somewhat fair criticism at this point in time about pickleball is it does seem to be a sport for the higher echelons of society somewhat, right? If you look at let's say how much a paddle costs, as opposed to what a badminton racket will cost, or even tennis racket, I think, for that matter. Although I think tennis racket is slightly similar in price, but that does seem to be quite a pain point. And even the prices of the courts, common refrain is that they say, oh, if you book a badminton court, it's like 40 ringgit, and then now you book a pickleball court 70, 80, and then some even claim that international court there 400 ringgit, right? Do you think that is a fair criticism of the sport?
I personally feel not really. Like obviously there are situations like that, and obviously you have the full range of like I won't name names, but people know which one I'm referring to. You have 200 ringgit presidential court, and but there is also the other end, right? There are
Mm,
like 15, 20 ringgit pickleball courts. So I actually think like in some ways, yeah, how I present this. let's talk about badminton and pickleball, right?
Mm,
These
mm,
two of our biggest sports on Courtsite.
yeah.
And I think if you look at playing the sport as a whole, right, court bookings, equipment, etc., I actually think they come in fairly close to each other. One thing that people may not realize for badminton, the enthusiasts actually for I think even like average player up, the shuttlecock is super important. And
Yes.
essentially for them, they will use one tube and that's it. Like they will never use it again. Whereas pickleball, you can argue the ball is cheap, right? The paddles are a bit more expensive, but the ball is cheap.
Mm,
But you also can get very cheap paddles. So I think also the other thing about pickleball relative to badminton is that the chances you can grab like a complete beginner, never even hold a racket in your life, to be somewhat competent is easier. In some ways, that means that if you want to book a court and play it with 16 people, that's very possible. Whereas badminton, you might struggle to find the right level of fitness and stuff like this, right?
mm,
So
mm,
I think if you look at it zoomed out, like cost wise per player, actually might turn out about the same. Um,
mm,
so I think the sort of criticisms measuring on a very specific point, whether it's court bookings or the paddle, it's a bit too zoomed in, not
mm,
zoomed out enough. Um, I think the other interesting thing also with pickleball is that we're seeing wider adoption across demographics. So I think for badminton, it leans towards certain races as opposed to pickleball. I think we're seeing a more even split, not directly even, but better. Um, and we're also seeing it grow in areas that were quite surprising. So the obvious ones you can think of is like our Klang Valley is really strong, right? But there's some places out of town that I won't mention for now, so that our competitors won't try to compete with us on those areas. But we're seeing like adoption potentially even better than Klang Valley. So
mm,
um, these are places that you wouldn't think of initially, um, and not very affluent areas. So I actually would push back against the concept of pickleball being a very um, uh, upper echelon sport in terms
mm,
of social or like financial status. I
mm,
actually I think there are a lot more options compared to badminton courts or any other sport. I think paddle is definitely one we cannot argue it is upper echelon. But for pickleball, the adoption is so good. There's a lot of options, and yeah, I think we're seeing the full bell curve of like a healthy like ecosystem of like when it comes to
mm.
court bookings, and I think similar for equipment as well.
Yeah, my personal feel is that I think that criticism and that hate around it being this T20 sport will definitely start to go away a lot faster once the sport is able to penetrate schools, right? Once it goes into the grassroots, I feel like, at least personally, I think that's where it becomes accessible to a whole new level strata of society. Um, yeah, because I think right now the thing that doesn't help its cause as well is you see the people who are playing it, they tend to be in a certain strata as well. So maybe that doesn't help the cause. And I think you're right. What I had this discussion with a friend who plays badminton. It's like, yeah, you guys, if you think about the amount that we spend on shuttlecocks, it's actually not cheap. Especially if you are very particular. I only use RSL.
Mm-hmm.
I only use Yonex. Blah blah blah. Must be this model. Must be this type. Then the minute one of the feathers go off or cannot use already. So like you say, right, there is that recurring cost or hidden recurring cost that is not factored into the cost of
Yeah.
adopting the game. Yeah, okay, that's really cool. Last area that I wanted to sort of pick your brain a little bit about, and I know this is something that's a bit of a closer to your heart, is really around this startup scene in Malaysia, vis-a-vis Southeast Asia. And one of the things that I've had over the many years of interviewing, tech folks, product folks, founders, is that Malaysia is in a very interesting state when it comes to startups, and even like if we talk about by extension funding as well, because again, this is what I hear. I'm not a startup founder myself, so maybe I'm hearing just the wrong people, but it's always the case of where Malaysia is too small of a country to win funding on its own, or to have this, homegrown explosion. But at the same time, it doesn't have a big enough accessible market, like Indonesia, or a margin market like Singapore, in order to really expand. And I'm really curious, as someone who's been involved with Courtsite, has always been almost exclusively in Malaysia. What are your thoughts around that, and whether there is a problem?
I think this to answer this question on the individual level, it'll be very difficult because if let's say your goal is about I want to create the next unicorn, I think that answer will be very different from a person that says like, actually, I just kind of want to do what I love and of course be able to sustain myself, be able to build a team that will allow us to achieve that mission. I think that will be a very different answer. I think the traditional sort of stereotypical path for like what is the how fast can you hit 100 million ARR kind of world. I think Malaysia is probably not the right market for that.
Mm,
In terms of whether that's like yeah, like you mentioned, like the margin side of things in a market like Singapore, where I think interesting observation coming back to Malaysia relative to UK is that when it comes to B2B SaaS sort of tooling and products, the the better UX, the more effective tool becomes is not as important as price, right? Pricing sensitivity is so strong that even though you can argue if I use this tool, my employees would be 2x more productive, they won't pay 2x, right? They don't mind 1x on the tool and I 2x my headcount. Like it's not that crazy for them. Or they create such a competitive sort of job role that like they bring the cost down. So a lot of cost measures. They look at things on cost rather than value. Obviously, this is a broad generalization, but I think that's probably the the critical mass market approach. But yeah, I think if you're going the approach of like trying to create a unicorn, I think tackling only the Malaysia market, you're going to struggle. You're going to
mm,
be quite difficult. But beyond that, I actually think Malaysia is a really, really good place to start a company, especially as a Malaysian. Or like even if you take away sort of personal circumstances of like having a support system around you, having existing network that you can tap on, whether that's friends or family. Um, I think even that aside, like one thing that I do admire, and I think this is something that we do really well, even relative to like Western countries, is like the SME culture, right? How easy it is to start a company. Um, the barriers are quite low. Obviously, I still think we have a lot of regulation that doesn't need to be there. When you become an employee, you need to register like three, four different bodies. Like this is all things that can be simplified. But
mm,
other than that, like, I think the SME culture, the spirit of like starting your own business is so strong. Um, and that creates a whole ecosystem of customers that you can kind of create. And what I'm alluding to is like the SME audience, right? I think SME audience from a tech B2B sort of SaaS platform point of view, this is something that is very undertapped. And I think you're starting to see that recognition across the board, like recently with Foodie Media,
mm,
their IPO. I remember seeing Pinyang's Instagram post, like the first line was like helping SMEs like bring their services to market or something like that. Like SMEs
mm,
was a keyword there. Um, so I think like if I were to start from scratch, like I don't think I'll change the fact that I would be looking at SMEs.
mm.
But obviously it comes with your own set of challenges on how to
Yeah.
tackle that. But if you want to build a company in Malaysia and Malaysia market focus is something that you're okay sort of focusing on and not necessarily wanting to create a unicorn, I think the SME market is like ripe for disruption. whether that's
Mm,
from the banking side all the way to like productivity tools. Like there's so much there.
Yeah, I like the way that you've put it, right? So maybe it's the framing of what kind of business do you want to build? And I think that that's a really key point. And I guess then, and as an extension of that, and as someone who has come back from abroad to sort of invest your efforts and your money and everything here as well, do you think that that kind of thinking also needs to permeate into the decision makers, the policy makers, as well? Because if I'm being really blunt and honest, there are a lot of there's a lot of help and there's a lot of opportunities for those who still want to go down that unicorn route, seems like. But for those who are okay, you know what, I recognize that, trying to build the unicorn from scratch is going to be hard, and maybe the playground that I need to play in, or that little pool that I need to swim in, is really in the SME market. It does seem that there's a lot less of opportunities there in terms of helping policies or encouragement type efforts that can help people make that decision, as to, instead of just being someone who takes a salary job, to go down this entrepreneurial route. Do you think that's, I guess my question here is, am I thinking about it the wrong way? Am I not aware of such things, or do you think that there's something there?
There is definitely some help, but not in the like if you came out today and said, okay, I'm gonna build a SME product to tackle XYZ, um, and you just threw that into the market versus like I'm building an AI tool that was gonna do XYZ, like you're gonna get very different responses.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
although there is some help, obviously there is some concentration of resources into more interesting or like more up to trend areas. Like if you said data warehouse, AI, uh, if you mention any of these two words, like you probably can get the attention.
Yes, especially AI. Must put the
Um,
word AI three times
but
in the first page.
Gen AI, yeah. But at the same time, like I do feel like in some ways, here's where this is probably a very poorly formed thought, but kind of speaking from just gut feeling. I think I think one thing in the under resourced area, um, let's say if you're talking about grants and stuff like this, I think there are some, but I wouldn't see that as a complete um, detractor. I actually see it as, in some ways, if you get it right, it's harder for people to compete, right? Um, the sort of making sure you build the right thing so that you can get the adoption, so that you can start the stop the survival mode quickly is probably the bonus of being in tackling an area where it's not that well funded. So in some ways, like I wouldn't see that as a complete like, oh, we should actually try to fix this problem. I would, as a individual, sort of think of it as like, here's how I could not game it, but like how I can use that as an advantage, right?
Mm,
If I build the
mm.
right problem and I get the right penetration and get the right traction, like it'll be harder for others to jump in as quickly as I would be able to, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think maybe that's me on a with more of a micro hat on rather than a macro, being able to understand from a government perspective what can they do to
Mm.
move the needle. Um, so yeah, I think I wouldn't, as a person looking to start a startup, see that as a roadblock, but more of like how can I turn that into a strength is probably my advice for people who are looking to start companies for SMEs.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. All right. I know we've been going on for a bit, and unfortunately, it's been a really good conversation. But as usual, time flies, right? So I guess, as we sort of close today's session, as well, um, do you have any thoughts that you want to leave with the listeners? Like, is there any sage advice, or is there, something that you want to sort of share from your experience, or a thought that has helped you, that you think will be relevant to those who are listening in?
Yeah, I guess we touched a lot on like entrepreneurial sort of like topics, starting your own company, who should you build for, etc. I think one of the most underrated things that I feel very strong in the UK, but not very strong here, and probably because it's so easy to start a company, is undervaluing working at companies, right? I think a lot of people see it as like, oh, I when I work for someone or work for other company, like I'm just building up my resources to then go start my own company. And I think that is definitely one way to do it. But a lot of people underappreciate the ability to work for others and practice the same skills that you would need to have to be able to run your own company.
Mm,
Um, so I think um, obviously I do encourage anybody that wants to make the jump to make the jump, but I think the option of like working for others and putting the same level of effort and same level of thinking and care into everything that you do, including working at a company that is not your own, is actually kind of like free practice for you, like zero risks attached. Gambling with someone else's company. Gambling is probably the bad word to use here, but as an engineer, I've seen a lot of cases where they become a ticket monkey at a company, but I know deep down they are very product minded and they want to build their own startup on the side. And like sometimes it's good to like when whatever you do, you put that same level of care and thought, and that's how you kind of stretch yourself, build the skills, and not only do it when you need to,
mm,
if that makes sense, right? That when you do start your own thing, I think that's something that I wish more people sort of like sort of paid attention to, and not have the typical mentality of like, oh, they paid me X, so I'm not gonna do more than X. Like actually the person that you're cheating is yourself. Like you're robbing yourself of the opportunity to like go and learn or like extend yourself. So yeah, I think that's probably the main piece of thing that I would love everyone to like consider. And if you're the sort of person that cares about doing more in your career or like with your life, I think there's also a whole boat of people which is like work can be transactional. My sort of interests come from outside of work, like that's completely fair. But if you're the sort of person like I want to start my own company in one day, or like I wish I can live the freelancer nomadic lifestyle, like um, I think in your current role there are ways that you can like build the skills that you will need for the future.
mm. Thank you so much for that, Aaron. That is a really wonderful take, and I think underrated take as well. Because I think, as you said, right, there is a lot of literature out there that really talks about finding your financial freedom, your unleashing the entrepreneur spirit, and all of that is great, but not shortchanging yourself by only bringing that 80% or that 70% of yourself to wherever that you are now. So thank you for that, Aaron. That has been super helpful advice. Hopefully, it really resonates with the rest of the listeners. It definitely resonates with me. Um, and also thank you so much for once again agreeing to be on the podcast. Not sure how how common is it for you. I know that you're probably doing lots and lots of interviews, but to come on to this very niche podcast and really share very candidly is something that I appreciate a lot. So thank you so much for that. Yeah, and definitely hoping to see what
No,
comes next for Courtsite. Yeah.
no, thanks for
Okay.
having me on. Like honestly, like I love chatting with anyone. So this has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aaron. And yeah, for the rest of the listeners, yeah, I do hope that you've enjoyed today's episode as well. And I do apologize that I've been away for quite a bit. Yeah, very happy that right now like FuseCon is over. Then hopefully next year get back into the thick of things. Looking forward to having more recordings coming out over the course of next year. But for now, For those who are going on holidays, please be safe. Weather's been a bit crazy these days. So yeah, please be safe, but also have fun. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you next time.